Welcome to the latest episode of Five on the Floor on the Five Reasons Sports Network. Thanks for joining us on your favorite podcast app. On Apple, recommend Apple Podcasts or Spotify. If you're on Android, we really do recommend you getting us on Spotify. It gets there the quickest, stream us easy, and again, we're there for every single episode. You can also check out the Five Reasons YouTube channel for content around the South Florida sports spectrum. And check out Off the Floor Discord server, link right here in the description. Bypass the Apple upcharge, pay the $2.99 a month. You can cancel at any time. 10 different channels. Everything good from Twitter is split up there so that Heat fans can consume it easily and then converse about it. Also, we've got the stage shows and the host updates. More to come on Off the Floor. This is where you're going to want to be as we get closer to training camp, so give it a try today. Also, Prize Picks, use the code 5, F-I-V-E, put down your 5, get your 50. Prize Picks, the official fantasy sponsor of the Five Reasons Sports Network, legal in the state of Florida. Yes, there are things to play there right now. Actually, Pacquiao's fighting tonight, so you can get in on that one if you're listening to this on Saturday. And he is on there, as well as MLB is now back after All-Star and WNBA. So check it out. It's Prize Picks. Use the code FIVE. And now, today's episode.
Mercy, luxurious, Heat Nation, yeah, Mercy and Lago, down to Biscayne, yay, five on the floor, ride for my dogs, where here's the thing, you can check the score, hustle hard, couple scars, wearing bubble frauds, down to Biscayne. Kept the floor playing, got it all banned. Y'all seen the block, stop with one hand. And Pat we trust, it's power, have the guts. We're here to bring the heat, y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to Five on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, Alex Toledo, Brady Hawk, and others from the Five Reasons Sports Network. Also, make sure to subscribe to Off the Floor for the most heat anywhere.
All right, welcome back to Five on the Floor. Here's today's floor plan. I'm Ethan Skolnick. You can follow me at Ethan J. Skolnick on Five Reasons Sports. We got Greg Sylvander. You can follow me at Greg Sylvander. Make sure to check out recent episodes that we did, including Should Eric Spoelstra Continue to Be Outspoken? Thank you for the pun. Went in there with Mateo. And you, what do you think on that, by the way? Yes? No?
Well, yes, he needs to speak up as much as possible. This is his league now. But so that's right. Yeah. I'm probably on Sean's side.
Yeah, I was on Sean's side too. Although Mateo made a couple good points. I think one of the points that I took from Mateo that I also that I do agree with is it can't, if you're gonna do it, it can't just be one guy.
Oh, for sure,
right? Because then the player thinks that you're picking on him. So, but other than that, I'm in favor of it. Also, another episode should be up by now. By the time you listen to this one, Eternal and I on Bam's 28th birthday, kind of where he goes from here, and then many other episodes about Hakachonis are in there. Summer League, mercifully over. And I say that because there were some decent things that happened. I think Ware being called out and responding is one of those things. I think that, obviously Pelle Larsson and, him looking like he's improved year to year, and there's more that he can do in the rotation this season is good. And Hakachonis had moments, which I know you got into in a pod with Adele, but overall, like the summer league collection of players they had this year was not that inspiring compared to past years. So I still think that a two-way is going to come from somewhere else, but we'll see where that goes. But we're going to talk about something a little bit bigger picture here, more important than a two-way. Last year, the two-ways really didn't contribute at all. Is kind of best case and worst case scenarios for the roster as it stands. This is not the roster you want. This is the roster you have. That's what we're going to do this episode based on. We're expecting Andrew Wiggins to be back in training camp. At least the Heat are signaling that. And he's been in the facility recently, and they've spotlighted that on social media. I feel like they're going out of their way, especially with Spoelstra's comment, to say, well, once Andrew gets comfortable,
he's part of the team.
It's part of the team. That's the direction it's going. And the Terry Rozier thing, Brian Fonseca and I might do an episode about this because he has followed this more closely than me, but there was some more news about Rozier. Not news. It's not news. It's just more revelations about Rozier and highlighting what went on with that situation, that he's being investigated in this gambling, player prop deal. And Brian has some thoughts on it. I have some thoughts on it too. We'll get to that. But as of right now, he's on the roster also. So we know what the roster is at the moment. Okay. And that roster has added Norm Powell, Simone Fontecchio. I got better at that. Hakachonis. And who else are we looking at here? And is that wait? Burks is
Norm Powell?
gone. I mentioned Norm. Yes, Burks is gone. Duncan Robinson is gone.
Yep.
Kevin Love is gone. Right.
Mm-hmm. Kyle Anderson is
And
gone.
Kyle Anderson is gone.
Davion's back.
Davion is back. They have a roster spot, right? That's where we're at. And
yeah,
of course,
and they're
Dame is not taking their
1.4
roster
million
spot.
over the luxury tax. So people keep DMing me, asking me when they're going to fill their last roster spot, and it might be never.
A while. Or never, yeah. It was pretty much never 1 year, wasn't it? It certainly could be. And by the way, Dame, yes, we will do an episode on all of that at some point. But just two things on that. Number one, I was not all that in favor of having a redshirt year for him and bringing him back in at 36, 37 after an Achilles. Anyway, I did speak to that on an episode that we did. But beyond that, there's also the fan reaction to this, which I really objected to because people were getting on him for essentially, wanting to be around his children, which is the way I read the situation based on how it played out. And so I'm sorry, I'm just not going to be with you on that. Okay, let's get to the best case scenario for this team. As is, because that is the topic of this episode. Then we'll do worst case scenario. So this is assuming, everyone's going to say, well, nobody gets hurt, right? So we're going to kind of take that out of the equation for best case and also for worst case, because it's very easy to say worst case scenario, Bam gets hurt and he misses 80 games. Well, yeah, okay, that's worst case scenario. But we're talking about like what the potential is for the roster as it is, provided that it is on the floor. All right. And then we'll get into a little bit what the upside is with record and all that stuff. But we're going to talk about the individual parts of this. To me, the number one thing here that will lead to their best self, is they need a second scorer here to help Tyler Hero, who I do expect to have a very similar season to the one he just had. I don't see a reason why he's going to backslide. The last few games of the season last year were very good prior to the playoffs. They were actually his like 8 to 10 best games of the season. If you look at it in that stretch, he had like that little thing after the All-Star break that wasn't so great, and then he picked it up afterwards. I expected to still play at a high level. I don't think teams are going to quote unquote scheme him out. They were already double teaming him. They were doing all that stuff to him. And yes, he was having to react to all of it. And sometimes it wasn't always pretty, but I don't expect like he's going to all of a sudden shoot 37% from the floor this year. I don't think that's going to happen, but he needs offensive help there. And we just did an episode on Norm Powell. And I really think the best case scenario for them to become a credible offensive team is for Norm Powell to replicate what he was doing with the Clippers prior to the All-Star break last year. Is that fair?
Yeah, they need Norm Powell to not just come in and score and do all the things that can help take pressure off Tyler, but there's a degree of like, we have to accept that the Heat's best shooters are also their best scorers in Tyler and Norm. I mean, like, what did he shoot? Close to 42% in LA last year. Like, they need that kind of shooting on high volume. I think that's just going to be a big part of also replacing Duncan. And they're not bringing back Alec Burks, it seems, at this current moment. So like you're needing not only your bucket getting from your backcourt, but they also kind of have to be your spacers. And that's going to be a big part of how Bam can have a bounce back year as well. So I'm with you. I feel like the Norm Powell addition, you need him to also like, and this is a big thing we should acknowledge. He's in a situation where he's playing for a contract. So he likely is going to come in and try to be the best version of himself to try to earn that contract. And that's exactly what you want. You want a motivated guy that is looking to have his best season. And then if Tyler can replicate what he does, then you can talk about this being with Davion being off the bench, an upgraded backcourt to what we've seen maybe since the season that they went with where they had Kyle and, you know, had the 1 seed in the conference. Like, other than that, this is going to be a revamped backcourt that I think can be pretty, like, if we're going best case scenario here, it can be a pretty, as they say in that building, ignitable backcourt.
Well, I think that's the difference between this year and last year is when they were talking up the TNT thing. It never felt to any of us. This is without knowing how Rozier was going to fall off a cliff. It never felt to any of us like it was sustainable anyway, because of the nature of the way that Rozier plays as compared to the way Powell plays, which is that Rozier, although he had decent off the ball numbers playing with LaMelo and Charlotte on a horrible team, Powell has had those off the ball numbers on a good team. I mean, they were a playoff team last year. They weren't really supposed to be that good after Paul George left, and Powell was a big reason why they were, especially again before he had an injury and before the break. So the two of them, together, I think can do things that everybody wanted. Well, not everybody wanted, but that there was this hope trafficking about what the TNT backcourt could be, and I just don't think that was. Rozier dribbles too much for that. Regardless, even if he had shot the ball at his historical levels, okay, the way those shots come are disruptive to the offense because a lot of them were rhythm. Like, you just got to let him sort of go off and just hope he's going to make all these tough shots. That's not the way Norm Powell plays. The way Norm Powell plays is in the context of the offense. And this was the case before he got to the Clippers. I mean, I've liked him since Toronto. He just fits with your team. He doesn't screw things up in terms of your sets or anything like that. And I think that the on the ball work that Tyler has had, even though we don't want him on the ball all the time, will be helpful. So I think that the backcourt has a chance to be what they were kind of hope trafficking it to be last year, that I don't think any of us ever believed it was going to be. Let's start there. So if that's the case, okay, if the backcourt is pretty good together, offensively at least. And then you have the Davion element defensively. And I'm not going to hope traffic Davion shooting what he shot with the Heat last year. He's not going to shoot 45% from 3. Give him credit for the work, but Brady and I have said this over and over, Alex, you're not getting that again, okay? It's just such
We'll
an
take
outlier
40.
for what he's done. Right, take 37, okay? Like, right? I'm not I'm not going to project he's going to shoot the way he shot at the end of last season. But you do have the makings of a pretty solid group there. I'm with you. So let me throw one more in the mix in terms of a positive, because I think this is the X factor player for this season. And I know some disagree with me because they're going to talk about the player that was just talked about a lot in Vegas. To me, the X factor player for the season is Nikola Jovic. And I think if they can finally, okay, and Spo, I asked Spo this out there, and he said, well, we were finding a role for him, and then, he got hurt. They got to find one consistent role for him, stick with it, so he doesn't have to think and just let him play. I just think there is a skill set here that nobody else on this roster has. It's the ability to kind of see the floor. Again, he just think when he's playing well, they look like sort of a well-oiled machine sometimes because he just has the ability to see things a little bit before they happen. And there's not, again, a lot on this roster that you can say that about. They don't have elite athleticism on this roster. So they're going to have to create offense in other ways. They don't have a lot of guys, just go get me a bucket, don't need a screen. Okay. That's not what this roster is. They don't have a lot of above the rim type stuff. And we'll talk about Wiggins, kind of where he's at. But to me, Jovic, if they can find 30 minutes a night for him where he can be his best self and you get this backcourt playing well together, okay, the three of them, then, maybe they can be a 12 to 15 offense in the East instead of scratching out 21st to 23rd as they have the past couple of years. That's kind of where I am with the best case scenario on offense.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think that a lot's going to depend on shooting. I think you identifying that, and let's just remember this, Nico is also playing for a contract. And I think like that's another element where he can, if he finds a role and they can use that to so basically we've identified in the backcourt Norm Powell, and then now on the wing, if you have Jovic, Pop, Like those are two things that can really, when we're talking best case scenario, because I think you kind of know what you're getting from Bam and Tyler. I think you could even get a better season than last year. I thought Bam obviously had kind of a weird season last year, and there's a chance for him to regroup and not have those weird moments like he had it early on. You kind of know what you have everywhere else. So this is the thing about adding Norm Powell and then Nico finding a role. I think there was also a day, and I agree with you that that's more important than what Ware will ultimately be for them this upcoming season. People don't want to hear that, but that is the way it is. I thought Jaquez was trending also as a guy that could need that would have the opportunity to like harness a role, particularly with Jimmy gone. He like had so much of those same skills, it appeared, and we just can't count on any of that. So I think you're right. Like you got to evaluate Nico, know what you have, because then you got to make a decision on if you're going to pay him.
All right, we're gonna go over to the other side of the ball in a second, and I also want to focus a little bit on Wiggins because, again, it's how much of a needle mover are all of these things? I think that's what we're getting into now. But before I get to the break here, do you see any way if everything broke right for this team? Let's say Hero replicates what he did last year, shows a little bit of growth around the margins, which is I think the most that you could really expect. Powell comes in, replicates what he did with the Clippers early last season. Bam is closer to the player offensively that we saw in the last sort of third of the season than we did in the first 2/3 of the season. Wiggins, while here, he's not going to score 42 regularly like he did in that one game, but as a secondary sort of, option creator, coming off, again, it's coming off some of those actions, bending the defense a little bit, getting to the rim, getting to the line a little bit more, hitting the mid range. If he is his best self, if they get the Jovic pop, even without Jaquez necessarily, but they get pretty decent play from some of these. Maybe Fontecchio, while he can still be waived and stretched. He may not necessarily last the season, but maybe he shoots closer to what he usually shoots against the Heat than what he shot against the rest of the league last year. I mean, if all of those things happen, is there any way this is a top 10 offense?
I think that's going to be really. I mean, they would have to basically the year that they were the 1 seed, which I'm referencing, and it'll make sense when we get to like what the win total can be for this type of team with Kyle Lowry that year. If I remember correctly, they were first in the league in 3-point shooting. They would need something like that. They're going to need to like do something statistically like lead the league in 3-point shooting percentage for them to creep into a top 10 offense. I just don't know that there's enough creators, even though Norm helps in that regard in a big way, being able to go get a bucket. And he is more athletic than some of the other guys they've had next to Tyler. I don't know that they can get to 10. Do you think they can?
I don't. I think the only way that it's even conceivable is the 3-point shooting, but I just don't see the shooters on the roster for that to happen. That's the problem. I mean, Powell, Hero, yes. I don't think Fontecchio's minutes are going to be enough. I think Davion slips back a little bit from 3. Bam, even if he continues to shoot the 3 like he shot towards the end of last season, the volume isn't going to be there, I think, to affect it that much. And then I look at other guys that I just, who may be rotation players. Highsmith. Funny thing with Haywood is he tends to have these games where he'll hit like 3 or 4, and then he'll go through a stretch where it's not that consistent. Larson still needs work on the shot. Jaquez still needs work on the shot, and they seem to be, based on Spoelstra's comment about him being a downhill player, which I like that. It seems like they're going to try to get away from pigeonholing him in the corner this year, which didn't work very well. So I look at all that and I'm like, all right, Jovic, I don't think he's going to be high volume, although he can shoot as a spot up guy. So I don't see that this team is not going to be like the Golden State Warriors of Steph and Clay. I don't see that. And again, the athleticism, the ability to get to the rim, they should uptick a little bit from last year, but they don't have a Jimmy who can just put his head down and get to the rim, slow the game down that way. They don't have a ton of athleticism, so I don't think that the fast break is going to be a place for a lot of easy points. So you add all this together, it's going to have to be out of stuff that Spo designs. He's going to have to come up with a game for this team. You look at the 16-17 team that went 30-11 in the second half. A lot of that was because he found this drive and kick game with Dragic and Waiters, and they just beat it to death basically. And they used James Johnson, as a trigger man in the front court, and a lot of that ended up being very effective. But last year he never found a game for this team, and this year he has the Powell piece now and he has Wiggins for the entire season. There's more to play with. And he also knows Tyler can be efficient on high volume because he was last year. That's all good. But there's not a lot of bucket getters, as compared to some other teams. So I just think it's going to be hard to get up to top 10. But I do think they can be top 10 on the other side. So let's talk about that in a second. Real estate shop. FL.com, the Fort Lauderdale Realtor on Instagram. Right now, what are we recording this 11 o'clock on a Saturday? Amanda and Javier, they're already at an open house. The 3 houses sold this week from what I saw on IG all over South Florida. If you want your house sold, we always talk about buying a house. You want your house sold, inventory is starting to go up. Interest rates are obviously at a higher level than they were a couple of years ago. It's not the easiest process right now. So make sure you work with professionals. We know that once you're done with a house, you want to move on. Okay. You want to get, you want to get what you can for it, move to somewhere else. They can help you on the sell side as well. So buy, sell, rent, whatever it is you're looking for, real estate shop, FL.com. It's the Fort Lauderdale Realtor on Instagram. All right. So defensively, and it's always been said, you get Spoelstra and Bam, and you're already starting with a top 10 defense, right? So I don't see them being worse than last year defensively.
No.
I mean, Love wasn't playing. Kyle Anderson, Duncan, Jimmy was not really defending, right? So I don't see them being worse. Now I know that there were critics of Norm's defense in the Clippers. If you go back to Toronto fans, they thought he was a better defensive player than Clippers fans thought he was. So that has maybe slipped a little bit. He's 32. He's going to be 32 this season. So part of that plays into it as well. I do think though that they can get an uptick from him there. He's been a capable defender over the course of his career for the most part. So I think that we know Tyler is what he is on defense, and obviously he's going to log a ton of minutes. But you have Davion for an entire season. Larson in the rotation will help here. I just he competes at I really like watching him play. Like he just I don't think he's going to be a star, but I just think he is a rotation player on a good team. And he's going to get some of those minutes. Bam is still Bam. Highsmith is still here. I did not think Haywood had his best defensive season last year, but you obviously know he's capable as a defender. Jovic positionally, I think, has gotten much better. And then there's the wear factor here. We haven't talked a lot about Kalel on this episode. We did a lot last week. How much difference do you think it makes if I don't know, if he does the little things? If he does the little things, which they want him to do, which is part of defense, is boxing out on the defensive glass, right? So somebody else can get the rebound, or going up with 2 hands, or second effort, or all that kind of stuff. How much do you think it matters? And can they project, if he's at his best self playing with Bam, can they get a top 5 defense out of this?
Top 5 is a big ask, but I think that you're leaning in the right direction. I think that that's the vision, is that basically Bam and Spo can get you to top 10 or top 12, maybe we'll say. And then it's about what else can everyone do. And I think Andrew Wiggins has a interesting role in this defense if he's going to actually be here and be 100% entrenched in what they do all the way to past the trade deadline. I think that's a defensive piece that Spoelstra maybe didn't have last year that we could see him utilize more. He's going to trust Haywood, and the wear thing, to your point, and I think you're leaning in the direction where you think maybe that it'll be a Bam Nico front court. Maybe I'm sensing that from you. And I think a lot of fans maybe want to see the 2 bigs come back in Ware and Bam, even though it ended so bad with the Cleveland Cavalier series. I think most people want to continue to see that. And if Ware can do the little things like be where you're supposed to be on defense, like Spoelstra is not going to play you if you can't be where you're supposed to be. And so it's those little things that if he figures that out, the defense has upside. I don't know that it has top 5 upside. I feel like I'm trying to take my homer hat off here and say that maybe the top 8, something like that. That feels like the peak of this.
Yeah, and I think that the part about Ware is I think he probably will start, by the way. I would just lean into the Jovic lineup, but I think he ultimately will start because I think Bam wants it that way, and they committed to the end of last season, so it's going to appear like a step back if they don't do it that way. The reason I think Jovic should start is I just think it roster balance is better because they don't have a backup big.
Yeah.
So I get it. You're staggering. You're going to do all these different things. Maybe it really doesn't matter that much. But like the idea of Jovic as your backup 5, like I don't know. I like to me, you start Jovic at the 4. This is a different starting lineup than he started with last year because again, it's Wiggins instead of Jimmy. And if Norm's starting, which we're assuming, then it's Norm instead of Terry. And I thought a big problem for Jovic last year was he got lumped with Rozier, and he was the one that was yanked from the starting lineup at the beginning. So again, there was never any way to really get comfortable because the starting lineup didn't work, which we thought it wouldn't work. and then and Nico got hurt later in the season and everything else. I would have him starting at the 4 with this group because I think that allows you to play Hero and Powell more off the ball. Because if Jovic can handle just a bit of the creation in terms of starting sets with him, then you can run Hero and Powell off more things. So that's why I think that I wasn't necessarily looking for them to run Rozier off more things, and Rozier was going to over dribble it. But now you don't really have that. So I just feel like there'd be more of a free flowing. It feels to me like they could create more, and I know we're pivoting back to defense here in a second, but they could create more of a COVID year offense if they put, which remember, there was a lot of ball movement and body movement. Like they were really humming, and then they kind of fell apart right before the COVID break. And then they sort of got it back in the bubble. And Dragic had a lot to do with that, obviously. And they don't have Dragic, but they have mini Dragic, maybe, but he looks like he's 2-3 years away, at least. So if you're looking at creating that kind of offense, I think having Jovic in the starting lineup would assist with that. But I do think I think the way this is going to play out is they're going to come to camp basically telling Khalil he needs to earn it. And then they're going to say he earned it. And then he's going to start next to Bam in the starting lineup in the front court, and Jovic will end up being the 6th man. That's what I think is going to happen. It's not necessarily the way I would lean with the group as currently constructed. And I don't think that the two-way Golden is ready to play minutes as a 5 off the bench. So I don't see that as being an option. But back to the defense, they don't have their best group of defenders they've ever had, but they have enough, I think. And I think the big X factor here, and this is kind of why I saved him, is Wiggins, actually, because we didn't get the Andrew Wiggins we were promised last year at the end. We saw some flashes offensively, the 42-point game, the 30-point game. The defense was not what Golden State fans look. They love that guy in San Francisco, okay, and they still want him back. And I kept watching him last year, and I'm like, well, why? Like, because you didn't see it, and then Spoelstra came out and kind of gave voice to what we've thought, which is that he kept saying, well, once Andrew gets comfortable, and not just on the court, but everything off the court. I think, look, the players when they are embraced by a market, particularly after they were not really embraced before. Remember, Wiggins came into Minnesota as the savior. Like he was one of the most ballyhooed number 1 overall picks we've had in the past 25 years. People were like, you got to tank for this guy. And then what happens? Cleveland tanked because they didn't have LeBron, right? They get Wiggins. The first thing they do is trade him. So unwanted there. Goes to Minnesota, expected to carry the franchise. doesn't really do it. It took Jimmy coming in there to get them to the playoffs, right? We know that Jimmy was hard on him, as he can be on certain players. So you're dealing with an introspective, introverted guy, okay, who was called Maple Jordan, carrying like Canada on his back, all the rest of this, and then it doesn't really find a home. Not Cleveland, not Minnesota. He gets out to Golden State, and that organization will embrace you, and Steph will embrace you, and he ends up being like the second or third most important player in a finals that they win. And then he's traded. So I get it. That I don't think it has anything to do with hating the Heat organization. I just understand, like, if you're in that, you're where you're comfortable. You found your place. They just had a baby, like all of that, and then he comes to Miami in the middle of a season, and he's not Jimmy, but he's wearing Jimmy's number. Like all of that, I can understand how that would throw you off. Okay, but the end result was not good enough. Like the defense was not there on a consistent basis. And if you look at the roster they're putting together, they need him. He's the
Exactly.
glue. Right? He's the guy who's going to guard those guys, because you don't want Tyler doing it, right? And Norm, you want him focusing mostly on the offense. Andrew Wiggins is there. He's going to be their stopper. That's what he has to be. Bam obviously will clean up a lot of messes, and then you hope Ware does it. But I think if Andrew Wiggins plays like the Andrew Wiggins that he has at times defensively, he gets back to that level. Some of the metrics, by the way, were not as bad as the eye test was. Like there's some metrics on him defensively that are pretty decent from last year. But Greg, I think if they get there, I think they can be potentially in that 5 to 8 range defensively, and then we'll get after that's what the records are.
That is if it's not Wiggins, who's your wing stopper? Like, who is it? Is it Haywood Highsmith? Are you going to rely on him that much? You have Davion to be your point of attack defender, kind of, with those quick players. And he can even guard up at times, but I mean, he can't guard that much up. You know what I mean? Like there's just there's a cap to the size there. So I think Wiggins, and then obviously health, like this is we're taking all this for granted, and that there's just enough health for all of this to work itself out. I think that's what can push a Bam and Spo foundation into, and maybe I'm just being like, picky and splitting hairs between a top 5 and a top 8 defense, but like just even being one of the best defenses in the league, it's going to take somebody out on the perimeter on the wing with some size and just being able to guard guys. Like who else is it on the roster? Like these are the two things, Ethan, when we look at this team, and we're going to kind of tie a bow on this, what the best of it looks like record wise in a minute. But like when you look at a lot of this stuff, it's going to rely on shooting, and it's going to rely on wing defense, and it's going to rely on guys that they've brought in. Like, so you really are counting on Wiggins and counting on Norm Powell, counting on Davion Mitchell to all come back and be their best selves for this to come together. Like you have to have all the stars align essentially.
Yeah. And will that all happen? I mean, I think the counter to this on the defensive end is going to be, well, a lot of these players were here, and Cleveland got whatever they turned Ty Jerome into a superstar, and then in that playoff series against Cleveland, and then Ty Jerome couldn't do anything against Indiana. And you're kind of like, okay, well, maybe we are hope trafficking and all of this. I think they have pieces to be a good defensive team. We just didn't see it at the end of last year. And it is what Spo's going to drill on them. No question that they're going to start this camp and just drill defense. I'd show all those open looks that Cleveland had, because it was gross. And, that he pulled Ware off the floor. Wiggins had a horrible series. Tyler was hunted. It was all the worst possible scenarios. In fact, we don't even need to do that episode. You and I could just literally just roll the Cleveland tape. This is what this looks like at its worst. Best case scenario for this team. I might throw. Well, I'm not going to do it, but I might recommend. If you're ever going to bet on Eric Spoelstra to be Coach of the Year, this might be the one to do it. And I saw he's like 35-1. Only because it's going to require him to really kind of reverse what has been a little bit of a downward trend over the past couple of years. And also, there's not an expectation of success for this team that there has been, at least when you had Jimmy on the roster, even if you weren't getting motivated Jimmy or connected Jimmy or any of that kind of stuff. That there really is not a feeling from the national media that this team really has much to offer this year. They feel they're in if you listen to people, they're kind of in this netherworld and all this. And the Norm trade was kind of universally, even Kevin O'Connor, the biggest hate hater on the planet, like the Norm Powell trade. How could you not? Like, I mean, what we're expecting, 20 and 10 from K Love this year. So I mean, that's that out of the way. I think everybody agrees that was a good move, but I still don't believe that there's a consensus in any way that they've chosen a direction completely, or that it's going to go, all that well. That's the perception you get from national media. And so if
Agreed.
that's their perception, right. And there's also perception that Spo's a great coach. So if they were to get to this total, I think there's a chance he's top 3 in coach of the year. I could see, if all of this broke right, if Norm was the Norm that he looked like last year, okay? And I think Heat fans are really going to like him, just generally personality wise. All kinds of everything I've heard about him is positive. Uh, if Ware takes this to heart, takes a step, if you find a role for Jovic, if Davion Mitchell defends the way he defends and just shoots something reasonably close to what he shot last season, if they find another decent rotation player here, I think Larson may be the one that we're looking at the most. If Bam doesn't get off to the crazy slow start that he got off to last year, and if Wiggins is engaged and defends, could this team win 47?
I
I
think
think,
that's safe. I'm
yeah.
glad that you didn't say something outlandish like 52 or something like that,
Mm.
because I want to remind Heat fans, since the last year of the big three.
Mhm.
So I remember you mentioned this. They went 54 and 28 in that last year of the big three, and they were basically they hated that season. If I
Mhm.
could sum it
Yeah,
up,
felt it.
but they squeezed out 54 wins. The Heat have only won 50 games once since then, and that was that
Yeah.
year that they were the 1 seed with Lowry and Jimmy and Bam. But it was Kyle kind of leading a skeleton crew for a little bit of the
Mhm.
season. That's the only year they've got to 50 wins. So I think we need to just be careful. I think 47 is 1 win better than in 23-24. They were 46 and 36. I think you're probably in the range. It's probably 47. It's maybe 46. Let's just say 46 to 48 is probably like the range of the best that you can get from this team. And then you just got to hope that they get good matchups in the playoffs or
Mhm.
something like that. I don't see 50 wins from this group. That's just it. There's
No.
not enough.
I think most people are going to think we're a little high with the 46 to 48 too. I
That's best case though.
this is absolute best case. Like this, everything would have to break right, I think, for them to get there. I just uh and when we do the worst case one, you're going to see what our range is here. And I actually think it's most likely that they're going to be somewhere in between, and probably in the same kind of spot that they've been in the past couple of years. 47 would get them maybe even a 4 seed in this conference. Right? I
Mhm.
mean, New York, Cleveland, Orlando, it's kind of the 3 teams that people are talking about. Did you just look at that Milwaukee roster? If you X out Giannis on that roster, that's a
Oh, it's
horrible
bad.
roster. Okay, the Celtics obviously have gone backwards. Atlanta should be better. That is the one team I think may have sort of worked its way out of this sort of lower middle with some of their moves. We'll see how they all pan out. Toronto, I don't think has a clear direction. Now they've fired their GM. I don't know what they're going to do now as they head up towards the trade deadline. It's the conference is as bad as it's been, honestly, and it's been bad for 25 years for the most part. Okay, I mean LeBron carried it for a long time. It's not there anymore, and so yes, if you even honestly, if you got to 44 wins, that might get you a 4 seed. And
Well,
by the way,
44 got you a 6 seed in this last year, and that was like there was a tier where like
mm,
New York, Indiana, and Milwaukee all were in the 51 to 48 win range, and then it dropped to 44 wins with Detroit at the 6th seed. So 47, I feel like we've kind of put them exactly where I think if all things went well, you're looking at maybe a 5 seed.
Yeah, I don't think it's happening, but it would be nice if they look. Here's the other part of it. I think they won 42 games in the 03-04 season that we're always referencing, which was the season where their young players popped, and of course then they converted that to Shaq in the offseason. And that team was a 4 seed, wasn't it?
Yeah,
42
no,
and
you're
40. They were a
absolutely
4
right.
seed.
That was when the East was really bad. I don't know that the East. I mean, maybe this is the year that the East is.
I don't think the East has been this bad, and I'll have to look at the 03-04 and so what was on those rosters, but I think this could be a historically bad year for the conference. It's just everybody blew out their Achilles. I mean, what is Indiana going to? I don't even know what Indiana is going to try to accomplish now. I mean, they don't have Turner or Halliburton, so Nembhard, Mathurin, they're going to get a lot of looks. They had some interesting young players in that roster. They could look, I guess, a little bit like that Heat team did from 03, but I don't know. It's the point is, if
their
everything
pick in one draft to make sure that they had their pick for next year, and it was the most
right,
genius thing they could have done because now they actually can control at
right.
least, or if they can't control what happens, at least they have their pick.
And the thing to consider here is that the Heat will always try to win games, as we know. Some of these other teams will not. They have a different philosophy. And so if you have a roster that looks like some of these other rosters in the East, but you're more inclined to push forward, then you may finish ahead of some of those teams simply because they're not even really trying to, right? And so there are wins to be picked up. And that's why, yes, my 47 number is feeling really high to me, actually. But you're playing all these East teams more than you're playing the West teams. So there's a lot of games where you're going to go in and you're not going to be out talented. And if the coach is refreshed and finds a style, then you can win them. But 47, but I probably honestly should have said 44 the more that I think about it. But we'll get to the other episode and we'll see where that one goes. All right. Thanks, Greg. Appreciate it. Real Estate Shop, FL.com. Prize Picks. Use that code FIVE.
Thank you for listening to the 5 on the Floor on the 5 Reasons Sports Network. After all, someone needs to listen to my dad.